Now, New York banking on Joe Biden to win the presidential election. The state facing a potential $15 billion budget deficit in the wake of coronavirus, and federal stimulus money can help close that gap.
Yeah, COVID has claimed more than 25,000 lives across the state, and the numbers are on the rise yet again across New York. So let's bring in Lieutenant Governor Kathy Hochul. She joins us this morning to discuss the Republican rise in New York as well as the rise in COVID cases. Good morning, Lieutenant Governor. Thanks for being with us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me back.
We got a lot to chat about this morning. Let me start with this. Joe Biden, one step closer to becoming the next president of the United States, but Republicans still control the Senate. Do you think Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell will stand in the way of bailing New York State out of this budget crisis?
I do believe Joe Biden will be successful, and here's why this is so good for the country. Joe Biden is an experienced negotiator, a legislator. He came up through the Senate. In fact, when I was a member of Congress in a Republican House of Representatives, Joe was the vice president. I saw him come over across the aisle, know how to make the deals happen. So if anybody knows how to handle this, the divided government, he has had the lifetime of experience. And that's exactly what we need right now, a healer, a uniter, and someone who knows the legislative process to make sure that states like New York can get help from a stimulus plan, because we have no other alternatives. And there's a lot of red states as well, Republican states, that are figuring out that they also need help from the federal government. So I think that's the recipe with Joe Biden as president that's going to be successful for the state of New York to help us get out of this budget hole.
He
it's going to
definitely
be very
knows
challenging.
Mitch McConnell very well, as they've worked together for decades, in fact. So that is a good point.
Yeah, I think that's a point that many people maybe didn't realize, that it was during the Obama administration. It was Joe Biden who really was reaching across the aisle, working with many Republicans. Speaking of Republicans, Lieutenant Governor, they won some key races across New York State in our area. Is that at all sending some shockwaves through Albany about what that could mean for legislation here in the state?
Not at all. First of all, a lot of votes have to be counted. They haven't been counting on Nassau County, Erie County absentee votes. And there's a lot of places around our state where we're still starting the counting process. So I think it's a little premature to declare Republicans winners, but there's no way they're going to take the majority anyhow. They may have increased the margins a little bit, but it's still going to be a Democratic majority. With that being said, Governor Cuomo and I, we know how to work with this as well. We're not worried about the composition of the Senate. We worked very hard to elect Democrats. The two of us were out there nonstop, but we also know elections end on election day, and then you govern when the session begins, and we're ready to roll up our sleeves and do what we can to help navigate our way through these very turbulent waters that we still find ourselves in.
Well, speaking of turbulent waters, I want to ask you about how you're going to navigate this, because those new COVID quarantine restrictions went into effect this week as we're seeing an increase in COVID cases, that is, nationwide. How likely is it that the governor will call for, say, maybe another lockdown to stop the surge? Is that a possibility?
We are not looking to have another lockdown. We learned a lot of lessons. We knew that early on we still didn't have an idea of really what we're dealing with here, the scale of it, how quickly it spreads, how important testing and contact tracing is. But you look at the fact that, as you reported, we're surrounded by states that have very high infection rates. We are about 1.7% statewide. If you factor in the hot spots, we're about 1.8. That's extraordinary. And we're laser focused on keeping that down. And the quarantine rules you mentioned that just changed actually now add an element of testing. So if you do want to travel, and we still discourage out-of-state travel, we hope that you're only doing it for essential purposes. But if you're going to travel, you're tested when you return, you're tested 3 days later, and then we'll have clarity as to whether or not, if you test positive, you're going to have a conversation with a contact tracer. We're going to know who you've been in contact with, and then you're going to isolate and quarantine. That's the strategic approach that's been working so well under Governor Cuomo's administration.
Are there enough, because it seems like you're changing the way that people travel, are there enough contact tracers to actually handle the fact that people, they might be getting COVID fatigue, they might be traveling to other states and other places, especially given the holidays? Are there enough tracers to keep up with the demand?
We will have enough tracers, we'll have enough testing kits, but the bottom line is it's still not a good time to travel. We're just opening the door to be a little more accommodating, but that's not saying, okay, everybody, now hop on a plane and travel to see your relatives in Texas and Arizona and Florida.
You said we'll have enough. Does that mean you're still hiring?
Well, we will have enough. We assess based on our needs, and we worked with the Bloomberg Foundation early on. We worked with Johns Hopkins to have a lot of people trained, and so we have people we can deploy. And also, we've done more testing than any state in the nation. Yesterday alone, 141,000 tests were administered. So this is an area we know what we're doing. We've excelled at it, and we're going to make sure that we get this right.
All right, so before we let you go, I want to ask you, Governor Cuomo says New York is perhaps one step closer to legalizing marijuana. How soon can we expect lawmakers to perhaps vote on this? And is that going to be key to this deficit? I mean, is there any way out without it?
It's an important element toward the opportunity to get out of the deficit, but I will tell you, we are still very much hoping and expecting that Washington will understand that this was a national crisis, that we're going to need help from the federal government to help fund our first responders, our teachers, our healthcare workers. Otherwise, we're going to have tough decisions. Yes, marijuana legalization will help with that. An estimated $300 million the first year in tax revenues, and that's going to be depending, obviously, on demand. And other conversations, to answer your question, will occur very early in the next session. In fact, Governor Cuomo and I have supported this long before we viewed it as a budget enhancer. We also thought it's a socially equitable thing to do when you're surrounded by states where it's now legal. Why should we penalize New Yorkers, whether it's Canada, where people come into Buffalo and have access in Canada, or now the states around us that have adopted. So it's just reality of the times we're living in, and also the social justice issues that are underlying it. So all these will be at the forefront of our conversations when we return to the legislature with the new Senate in Albany in January. So very soon conversations will be occurring.
All right, Lieutenant Governor, thank you so much for joining us. We do appreciate it.
Always appreciate you coming on. You could always let Governor Cuomo know he's welcome on the show anytime he wants to come on with you. A joint appearance, maybe.
All right, will do. Thank you.
Thank you.